Rightio, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Life Livers Academy podcast. I am super excited to have my guest on the show with me today. Her name is Lisa O'Neill. She's a fantastic keynote speaker, coach. She's an author, but she is just someone who has an enthusiasm for life like you've never come across before. She's a firecracker is how I'd describe her, but she's someone who's just got a really unique perspective and attitude, and someone I'm really looking forward to having a conversation with. So Lisa, thank you so much for joining me. I'm excited to have a chat.
Thanks. How nice. I love being enthusiastic and lots of energy is kind of my thing, you know? I think that's why we're here.
It is your thing. Well,
why else are you?
Let's start there because enthusiasm and energy is something the world's lacking right now, I think. It feels like it's just flatlined in 2020. And, for good reason, there's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of uncertainty out there. But I feel like that topic right now is more important than ever before. So it's something that you speak on, and it's something that you've built a bit of a brand around. What are some steps that people can take at the moment to, preserve their enthusiasm and, build their energy and through all the stuff that's going on, maintain some positivity and still strive for excellence, because it feels like we're losing it?
Yeah, well, it's really hard, right? I mean, it's hard. It's kind of the true test, I reckon, of humans when the going gets tough. And I quite like a bit of a challenge. I quite like to sort of be challenged. And I remember beginning of March, when all this kind of hit, I was like, oh, I get a bit excited by big challenges. And I was thinking, This is going to be really interesting. And how do you keep your boat afloat in a storm? And what does that look like? And for me, it's about maintaining your energy on a personal level. And I think, for me, the lockdown was mental, because we had to suddenly change the way we worked, and we had children at home, and, no school, and my life tipped upside down, because I normally spend sort of 3 to 4 days a week in hotels and on planes and away from my family. Then all of a sudden I was locked up, and I was like, ooh, I felt like I'd been grounded, it was kind of like, and I kept walking out of my office and going, oh, you're all still here. Like, it was just kind of weird. And I source a lot of energy. I'm a raving extrovert, as you probably can already tell. And I love people. So I source a lot of energy from being around different groups of people and the hype that I get from that. But I also source a lot of energy from being completely alone and just having massive amounts of, I'm one of my favorite people to hang out with. I love hanging out with myself.
Nice,
and I find my head is just such a playground that I love to be completely alone, where I can kind of explore little corners of my own thinking.
Yep.
And I couldn't be alone, and I couldn't be with others. I couldn't do either ends of that. So I found that really, really controlling and, constraining. So I went into what can I control, so I think we get energy from so many sources. Like, we get physical energy from our sleep and our food and, being in the sun and all the stuff that's really good for our bodies. And we get emotional energy from doing shit that we love and from being, lit up, like being passionate and being lit up. I'm also a big believer in spiritual energy. So I spend a lot of time meditating and tapping into source, and, I spend a lot of time in a woo-woo world talking to angels. So that helps me as well. But I think whatever your thing is, you need to find your thing and do it. Really, I think it's about do you and do what you need. Like, and I kept saying to all of my family, right, what do you need to make you feel good today? And they're all like, oh, I don't know. Because, I've got 3 teenagers. 3 out of 4 of them were in teenage land. And I was like, well, you've got to be responsible for your energy. So, and I have a sign on my door at home that says, please be responsible for the energy you bring into this space. Yeah, and I'm like, don't come in here if you're in a shit. Just stay out and sort yourself out. And I quite often send them out. I go, no, go back. Just go out, because you've just bought you've just dumped. Like, our energy, I love that saying that our energy introduces us before you do. And I think, when someone walks into a room and you can just feel them, you're like, totally. Oh, what is up with that, right? And with teenagers, it's not their fault, but it's a constant state. And so I'm just like, oh God, go, just back you go, start again. Because that is just, you just brought this kind of shitty Wi-Fi signal into my environment. So just go away.
It's amazing how many people do that though, right? Like, people are just so unaware of the energy that they carry with them.
And they just kind of shit all over you and all over the room you're in. And it's like, actually, that's not okay. And, I love that thing. You have to be responsible for the energy you bring. And it's like, what are you bringing? It's like that old saying, oh, could you bring a plate? in the old days, people would say, come to this and bring a plate. And I'm like, yeah, but what's on your plate? Like,
what's on your plate? Yeah.
Yeah, what's on your plate? Like, what are you actually metaphorically bringing into this event? And what are you bringing into this room?
Yeah.
And if you're in it, we all have times where we're in foul moods and we're not up for public consumption. So I'm like, good, just tidy yourself up and keep yourself away. Like if you're in a bad mood, just don't, it's contagious. Energy is really contagious. And I'm really, really clear about what energies I will and won't take on. And I think we need to, and anyone who's listening who's got teenagers, you'll know what I'm talking about when, you're living with bloody Judy Moody and you're just like, ugh, I just don't even want to sit next to you right now because they've got this contaminated energy that's like, horrible.
So you're just really, I take it you're really intentional about the way that you show up in all different scenarios, because I feel like that's the key, right? And it's like different relationships and different scenarios require different energy. It's not like you can just be on all the time. But
absolutely.
I genuinely feel like a lot of in order to get the most out of life and out of all your relationships and connections, you've got to be really aware of exactly that and be intentional about how you show up. Like the way that I connect with you is important for getting the most out of this interview. And that goes for every 100%. Single interaction. But
everything, right?
Why don't we think about it?
Yeah.
Why do so few people think about that?
I think it's so important. I just think, and I think people don't understand intention. I really liked Richie McCaw's documentary. Was it Growing Great, or what was it called?
Something about great, because that's what he was.
It was great, and I'm saying that as someone who doesn't like rugby at all, and I cried twice when I watched it and then forced my whole family to watch it because it's just, I think it's Growing Greatness, it might be. It's a fantastic
Chasing Greatness.
Chasing Greatness, there you go. And he's just an extraordinary man who, became the All Black captain and then was so smart. He actually sat down and went, what does this mean? And how do I need to show up? And what do I need to learn to show up as the leader of the most famous team in New Zealand, and what does that mean to New Zealanders? And he writes, have you seen it? It's an amazing doco. He writes before every game his intention for the game and how he's going to, even he thinks about how he's going to walk onto the field and how he's going to interact with the media and how he's going to interact with the captain of the other team. And I just love that intention piece. And I always say to, when I'm speaking to groups, it's like you owe it to yourself to be excellent. Because if you don't, you're just letting yourself down. And, you can't be excellent all the time. Like there's days where you're just not capable, and that's okay. And that's where a little bit of self-compassion comes in, where you go, well, you got a cold, Lisa, you're probably not going to do your best. But, lucky for me, my 80% is better than most people's 100. So I think I'll be all right because I've trained myself in excellence, So my 80 is usually okay. I don't like to deliver at 80, but 80 is normally good enough. And I think we owe it to others to be enthusiastic. And, if you're paid by someone to do a job, then turn up and be amazing. Like, don't turn up and grumble and be, it's like someone is paying you. And if you don't like your job, leave. But don't turn up resentful and grumpy. And because the people that are employing you and relying on you, and it's the same with your family. Like my family are relying on me to be enthusiastic about whatever boring thing they're doing. It's kind of my job. It's like, I'm not interested in actually what they're doing at school, but guess what? It's my job to be enthusiastic. So I need to, it's about, who do you need to be enthusiastic for? And I think it's really interesting that not being excellent for others, like I'm excellent for myself. Yeah. So I had this weird conversation with a woman recently and she said, oh, you're really intimidating. And I said, what do you mean? No, I'm not. And she said, oh, you are because you've got really high standards. And I said, okay, but you're assuming that my standards, that they would apply to you. And I said, my standards are just for me. Like I'm not competitive at all, but I put a lot of pressure on myself, but I have very low expectations of other people because I've just spent my life being constantly disappointed. So I just lower the bar now and go, nah, yeah, whatever you do will be fine. And the only person I can really expect a lot of is me, I've learned. That's my wisdom, I think, now.
How do you balance that then? Because that constant demanding, obviously that's how you achieve excellence, is you've got to demand the most out of yourself as often as possible. But how do you balance that up? Because sometimes when you have such high standards for yourself, that can lead to feeling like you're always failing as well if you're not reaching them, or like talk to that for a little bit, because I feel like...
Yeah, and that's really important. So I'm really kind to myself. Like I am so kind to myself. And I spend a lot of time helping people learn about how to be kind to themselves, and actually learn to like yourself is a really big deal. Because if you have a high level of excellence and a high level of expectation, and then you're not kind to yourself, it's just a nightmare. It's just horrible. You're just actually beating yourself up all the time.
Totally.
So I expect really high standards for myself, and then I'm really nice to myself. I'm like, oh, wow, you were so good today, Lisa. And then I'm like, well, actually, you weren't that good, but you poor thing, you've got a bit of a cold. Like I'm really gentle with myself, like I would be to a friend. So, like if a friend came to you and said, oh, you won't believe what happened to me today. I did this and I did that. You wouldn't go, you idiot. You go, oh, well, mate, you did your best. And
that's such a good perspective.
Self-talk. Yeah, you've got to be your own friend. It's important, that self-talk. Huge.
Yeah, but it runs away on you without you even noticing it. Like it becomes so ingrained, and I think people, and I'm speaking from personal experience here, where you fail, or you lose a business, or you do something silly, you make some mistakes, but that you can go down that rabbit hole without even realizing it, and then all of a sudden that's your narrative that you're running, and it's bloody hard to pull yourself out of that. It can be. Yeah,
I've spent a lot of time working on that, because I've always had high expectations, and it was just I just realized that actually if I couldn't be nice to me, no one else was going to. And, it's not actually anyone else's job to make me feel better. It's my job. So I have to be completely self-sufficient in that I can push myself, I can release myself, I can relax myself. And, I think learning, I love the saying, the greatest project you ever work on is yourself. And I think working on you and working out what do you need to be you. Like, what do you need to be the best version of yourself, and what do you need to be the kindest to yourself, and what makes you feel good when you're anxious, or what makes you feel happy when you're sad, or what do you do if your energy's low and you've got something you have to actually do that day, so it's like finding little hacks, and they're all really personal. You can read books about other people's hacks, but you've actually got to find stuff that really works for you, I think.
What are some of those hacks for you then?
Oh God, I've got millions. Millions. I might have to write
give us a few
of hacks. Yeah, I've got millions. So sleep is my absolute god. Like I sleep. Sleeping's my favorite thing to do. And I learned really early that if I don't sleep, I'm just revolting. I'm horrible. And I worked that out quite early. I was like, oh, Lisa, you're horrible. So I have these kind of out of body experiences where I watch myself and go, wow, you were a bitch then. And then I sort of track back and go, what happened there? And I'm like, I think I didn't get enough sleep. So yeah, I think sleep is everything. I think preparation's really important, like being really prepared for stuff and turning up to give yourself the best chance of success is not turning up late, with your clothes on inside out and having no idea what you're on about. It just shows a lack of intelligence.
Totally.
I say to people all the time, you're too smart for this shit. Like, don't turn up half-assed. If just don't turn up at all, actually, if you can't do a decent job, because turning up half is, I reckon you're better off to disappoint them completely and not to show up than to actually turn up badly. I think that's appalling. So yeah, I'm good at that. I'm really tactile. So if I'm feeling, I wear different fabrics depending on how I'm feeling. I've got a real thing about fabrics. So I always carry like cashmere and silk and really soft things with me, because it reminds me to be gentle with myself.
Oh, right. Nice.
Yeah, so softness. I'm really into softness. I use a lot of aromatherapy. I find peppermint oil under my tongue will light me up when I'm feeling really drowsy and horrible. It's an instant pick-me-up. Like it's the greatest hit in the world, and it's all natural. And lavender will drop me like instantly if I've come off stage and I'm all hyped up and I need to get to sleep. Lavender oil, just poof, I'm flat. So It's good. Finding things like that I think your body responds to.
Yeah.
So they're things that, and food really works for me, but different types of food. Like I love food, but I don't eat gluten or dairy because they weigh me down. They bugger my energy.
Yeah.
My body doesn't respond well to that. So I think being really in touch with what you respond to, and then I don't eat carbs before I present because I get heavy. yeah, so I think, working out things like that what works for you and what doesn't, because it's just sabotage to go around eating a plate full of sandwiches, put yourself on stage, do a bad job with your clients, then have 4 coffees an hour before you go to bed and wonder why you can't sleep. It's like, that's just not intelligent behavior.
Totally. Like, well, what I'm hearing from you early is the 2 key themes that are coming through consistently are ownership. Ownership, take ownership of your own shit, sort your own things out, be responsible for yourself, and intention. They're kind of the 2 things that are coming through really strongly. And
get to know yourself, like really understand you. I talk about, and I talk about a PhD being a personal happiness development. So what makes you happy, and what do you like, and what do you not like, and what is your body like, and what is your skin like, and it's like what is your head like? Like I love really stupid comedy, like really lame stupid shit. Like I can change my whole energy by just watching cats falling off benches on YouTube. Just find that sort of stuff incredibly funny. So it's like just finding stuff that will bring you up or bring you down, or getting to know yourself. I don't think people know themselves very well.
Yeah, I think you're right there. I think people are constantly trying to be other people.
They spend their life trying not to be them.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? They spend their entire lives trying not to be them. They're trying to be their brother or their sister or their neighbor or their, it's like, oh my God. And we end up living our lives on other people's terms. And, you go from trying to make your father proud to trying to please your wife to trying to impress your son. And it's like, man,
and you're exhausted.
There's no way to live your life. So, it's horrible. And it builds resentment, right? So that's the other problem.
Yeah.
Is then you end up all bitter and twisted and resentful.
Have you always had that level of because like to I guess talking about being yourself, I think that's a massive thing. I really like the kindness element that you brought through. I think we could all do a bit more of that. But that confidence to be yourself is something that a lot of people struggle with. And have you always had that confidence to just be out the gate and be yourself or is that something that you've developed over time?
I was a major people pleaser when I was younger, massive people pleaser. I wanted the whole world to like me. And then I realized that once I liked myself, I didn't need anyone else to like me because I was good. Yeah. So that was a really big learning for me. And I did that really early. I feel really lucky that I did that early. And I actually have a beautiful friend who, I remember when I met this guy when I was 18 and he was 29. So he's quite a lot older than me. And he was gay and very, very overtly gay, like very camp, very queenie. And I remember watching him out one night and just going, oh my God, you just don't care what anyone thinks of you, do you?
Yeah, nice.
And he said, nah. And he said, I grew up gay in the 70s in New Zealand. He said 75% of people hated me for who I was before they even met me. Yeah. So he said, when 75% of people hate you, you actually don't really give a shit about the other 25. And I was like, wow. So then I was like, imagine if you just assumed that people didn't like you. Instead of going, oh, you have to like me. Like, I need you to like me. I'm like, what if I just went, I don't give a shit. Don't like me then. I don't care. My job is not to make you like me. And it sort of set me off on this whole thing where I would be like, and I love the saying that what other people think of you is none of your business. And now I couldn't give a shit what people think of me because I like me. So I'm good. I'm like, I don't need anyone to like me or approve of me because I'm kind of pre-approved, I'm like,
I love it.
I approved myself.
You approved yourself. I love that.
I approved myself.
I think it's so important. It sounds so simple when we talk about it. It's one of those things where you're like,
it's huge. Yeah, it's huge.
It's massive, eh? Like it is really one of those things that I think if most of the struggles that you have in your life probably almost come back to that.
Yeah, we're so consumed, by what other people think and trying to impress other people and honouring other people. And what we do is just constantly disappoint ourselves. You're constantly putting other people's needs ahead of your own, and you're constantly putting other people's opinions ahead of your own. And it's just no way to live, It's like, that's not the game we're playing here.
So what do you say to someone that's listening then that is in that boat? Because I know heaps of people and who are listening to the podcast right now and they're going, yep. I mean, like, how the fuck do you start? Because you get so in those patterns. Like, what do you do?
Oh, yeah, totally. I think, the first thing is to work out what you're about. Like, literally, I used to write lists. Like, what do I like? What do I not like? And then I'd go to write something down. Like, I don't like I don't know, something. And then I'll be like, oh, you can't say that. You know, like I remember being asked once when I was about 30, someone said, oh, you know, what are you into? And I was like, and I was thinking, oh shit, I should probably say world peace. But I didn't actually give a shit. You know, I was like, really expensive skincare and clothes. Like, I was like, oh my God, fuck, I'm shallow. And then I was thinking, oh, well, I think there's other people out there that are going to save the environment. And, you know, it's like, well, that's not my thing. That's not actually, I don't think that's what I'm put on the planet for. Yeah, and then it was about giving myself permission to go, it's just not my thing, you know? And it's like, you know, when people are like, oh, you should save the whales. And it's like, well, yeah, cool. And, you know, I love whales, but I'm not going to go sailing around the world looking for them. Like it's like you, and some people are mental about that. And it's like, good, you should save the whales because you care. So, you know, it's that you do you, because whatever you are pre-packaged with passion for and with interest in, I think if everyone just followed their thing, I think the world would work out.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, you might have this massive crusade inside you, but you haven't told anyone because you're scared what they'll think. Or you're scared that they'll go, oh, that's a bit lame. You can't do that.
Yeah.
You know, and I think actually you doing you, the whole world is better off if everyone does them.
It's also the most attractive thing.
It's great. Yeah, you meet people who are just doing them and you're like, fuck yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, yeah.
It's the most attractive quality. It's like I always think about the people that I'm drawn to, and you know, like I remember back in my early 20s, I'd always try and work out what my thing was, and it was like, fuck, it was so confusing because I loved musicians who played great music, and I loved athletes who are at the top of their game, and I loved like people who were motivational and just like wanted to help other people. And I was like, there's all this stuff that I like. I'm like, what category do I fit into here? And I was like, oh, I like ambition. I like people who've got ambition. And
you like high performance, right? You obviously like high performance.
I love high performance.
People at the top of their game. And it's like, doesn't matter. And people go, oh yeah, but I don't know what I'm about because I'm about sport and I'm about music. And you're like, yeah, but the actual, when you really sit down and write that shit down, and I'm a really big believer in writing stuff down. Right. You make lists of what you're about. There'll be commonalities in there.
Yeah.
But you never sit down with a pen and think that it's worthwhile exploring that, because it's not something we're taught to do. We're taught that it's bad to be selfish, that, you know, it's self-indulgent to actually talk about yourself, or, you know, and I love talking about myself and I love talking about you and I love learning about people, you know, it's like that's, and we're taught from a very early age, oh, don't talk about yourself. And, you know,
well, just tying back to that initial question that I asked about energy and enthusiasm and excellence. I mean, like, unless you put yourself first and unless you're self-aware enough where you actually know what floats your boat, it's fucking impossible to achieve those outcomes. You cannot be enthusiastic about stuff that you're not passionate about, or if you're doing something for other people, you cannot get the level of energy unless you put in the mask on yourself, as they say when you hop on the airplane. So actually,
it's funny because I'm really like that. I'm like, oh my God, I'm lucky. Two of my so I've got 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls, and the 2 girls dance, thank God, and I'm mental about dancing. Like, I love dancing. So me hauling my life off to a dance competition and putting on false eyelashes and watching kids in sequins just makes me so happy. Like, I'm like, oh my God. And I'm so grateful that they don't play fucking netball because I hate netball. And I thought, God, I just am constantly grateful that I didn't end up with a daughter that went, Mum, can I play netball? Because I'm like, I am not standing on a court watching angry, aggressive people fight over a fucking ball in bad skirts. It's just not my thing, you know. I'm just not doing it. And it's like, look, I just can't stand it. I can't, I hate it. And so it's like getting really clear and just giving myself permission to go, no, I hate that. I'm not doing it. It's like I banned my sons from cricket because I hate cricket. I'm like, why would anyone play cricket? It takes so long. It's so boring. Why do you wear white and you rub a white ball, bloody red ball all over yourself? There's no logic in it. And so I'm like, you can play cricket, but I'm not coming.
I've played cricket my whole life, Lisa.
Oh my God, I can't stand it. And you know, I did have a phase, I think between 16 and 18 where I was quite keen on a few cricketers. So I did spend a little bit of time watching cricket for my greater good, but I just don't understand the game. And it's not something that, you know, it's really funny. My father and my brother, major cricketers, loved it, which is possibly why I don't like it.
Why you don't like it?
But I think just going, you know, not everything can be your thing.
Totally.
You know, and I think it's okay to say that's not my thing. And when people say, oh, do you want to come and watch me at cricket? You're like, no, I'd rather eat my toenails. no, I really don't, because there's other shit I'd rather do. And then people are like, oh, but you should. And it's like, should is just the worst word, isn't it?
Yes.
It's
You
just
should.
the worst word. You should. It's like, why should I? Like, should. Oh, should gives me the shits. It's like, no, could. I think if you replace every should with could, your life will be so much better.
I feel better just hopping on the call already. I feel like I got more permission to go out and be myself after this. Look out.
I reckon. Yeah, all the permission in the world, right? Because it's like actually knowing how to do you is your job. It's your whole job on the planet. I remember talking to this guy once, the CEO of this big company, and he said, so what's your view on life, Lisa? And I said, I think we're just here to be happy and then die. And he was like, what? I said, well, that's the point. You're on the planet to be happy and to contribute, to make other people happy, and then leave. That's it. And he was like, well, it can't be it. I was like, that's it. What's the rest? What is the other point? You're not here to save money and, it's like collect trophies, because no one cares. You're actually here just to do you. And hopefully if you do a good job of you, your light gets really shiny and other people get a little bit of your sunlight. And I think if everyone just did them in a good way, it's the best thing ever.
I love that. Yeah, that's awesome. I agree with you 100%. What about in terms of, because I feel like there's like the energy side of things and the enthusiasm. I agree with everything that you've said so far. It's like if I could have asked what I wanted you to talk about on the podcast, you've already done it. So we could finish here.
Oh, we've nailed it. We've achieved early. That's because we're both high achievers. There you go. How good's that?
You can have all this energy and enthusiasm and excellence and be an absolute nightmare behind the scenes and be chaotic and kind of get nowhere or have no direction with it all as well. And so how important on the other side of that is actually having some structure as well, because I'm naturally not a very structured person. I'm an overly enthusiastic person. I'm overly optimistic about things. It's got me in the shit as many times as it's really helped me. So
I think we might be related, Jamie. I have no structure either. My fuel is pure passion, and it doesn't let me down actually. But what I needed to do was what happens to people like you and I is we're so passionate and we're really, really good at some things and we're really shit at other things. Mm-hmm. And we've been led to believe that it's our job to get good at stuff we're not good at. And I actually think that's flawed. So I think if you just do you and get someone else to do the bits you're shit at, the world's better. Because I work with people and I go, what are you good at? And they go, oh, I'm good at this, this, and this. And I go, okay, great. What are you shit at? And they go, oh, I'm shit at this, this, and this. And I'm like, okay, cool. What are you working on? And they go, oh, I'm trying to get better at the things they're shit at. There's no method in that, because when you're getting better at something you're shit at, generally you don't enjoy stuff you're shit at, right? So there's the fun fact gone. So it's not fun. And you actually already identified that you're shit at it. It's like me and running. Like, why would I do it? There's absolutely no point. I run maybe for a shoe sale or a lake plane, and that's about it. And it's like, there's just no point. And me getting better at running is not going to make the world better. So, and in a business sense, I see this all the time. It's like, if you're really good at something, and like I'm really bad at accounts and spreadsheets and boring things, right? I see we are related. So boring shit, because it's boring. And so, but there's no point in locking you or I up for 2 days, a month, to do boring shit when you're better off to go out and work in those days and pay someone to do the stuff you're bad at, because 100%. You can make more money and get more joy doing you. And there's people out there that love bloody accounts. Exactly. And they love all that.
Is there really?
Oh. Yeah, I've met them. I said to my new accountant, it's really funny. I said to my accountant, okay, so I'm not really good with spreadsheets. I actually don't like them. They kind of make my bum contract when I look at them. I just get really uncomfortable. And I said, I hate them. So she went, oh, well, we have a lot of them. And I'm like, yeah, I know, but can you just make them circles? So now everything I get's in a pie chart, because I look at a circle and go, shit, what's that big bit? And they go, well, that's your spending. And I'm like, shit, is it? Well, that's no good. But if it's on a spreadsheet, I will not be able to. It's like my brain just doesn't do so well with that. And I think understanding yourself even down to that level, like that, I think this neurodiversity is such a big thing now, and people understanding their brains and what they can and can't do. Like I stay in hotel rooms 3 or 4 nights a week, BC, before COVID. Yeah. I still can't I still don't know which way I go out of my hotel room. I don't know whether to go left or right. And I can be in the same hotel every night for a week and I will still come out and go the wrong way. It's like I have this weird direction thing. And it's just, I just don't do directions. I have no idea. My husband rings me all the time when I'm driving and says, "Where are you?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I'm on a road and there's some cars." Because I have no idea. I can't tell you. I don't care. It just doesn't enter my brain to try and manage which town I've been through when I'm driving. I don't know. I'm not there. I have left and I'm not there. That's all I can tell you, and it's all you need to know. I can't tell you that I'm 18 k's north of Waipuk. It's like, how boring. I don't know where I am. I've got no interest in knowing where I am. So I think do what you're good at, and getting the right support. But this is another big problem because we're not good at asking for help or even believing we deserve help.
Yeah.
So that's the other problem. You know, you've been taught to believe that you should be able to do this, Jamie. You're very clever. You should be good. Sort your shit out, you know. And it's like, that's not helpful. It's not helpful at all.
That is a major problem. I think the biggest mistakes, if I was to look back on probably the biggest mistakes I've made, it's that I've not had the ability to be vulnerable when it was so easy to just ask for help. There's probably all these people around who are like wanting to reach out and help you, and I've been like, no, I got it sorted.
No, I can do it. Yep, I'll be amazing. And it's like, how's that working for you? And not being helped is a big problem. And New Zealand has a big culture of that because we have this. It'll be all right. I can fix it. I'll do it myself. Yeah. And it's like, really? Will you?
It's quite destructive, eh? Like,
it really is. And especially if you're good at something, being good at something means other people go, you're a clever girl. You should be able to work that out. It's like, well, I didn't say I was good at everything.
Yeah.
And I'm really a big believer in, because when I used to employ staff, I used to look for staff like me. I was like, fuck, I don't need anyone else like me. I've got me, right? What I need is someone who's like, I had a mentor once and he was so boring. Like the most boring mentor, the most boring human. But he was great because he was just boring. And I didn't need interesting. Like I had interesting in fucking buckets. So I didn't need that. What I needed someone was to be really accountable and really dull and just say, "But have you done that, Lisa?" And I was like, "Oh, no." And, he just held me to my game, which was actually the most useful thing.
Yeah.
So I think that's a biggie. I really think understanding yourself to the level that you know what you're good at, what you're not, and then being really gentle. That's the hard soft, because it's like I'm going to be really hard on myself about the stuff I'm good at. But I'm really hard on myself with things like public speaking, because it's something I've decided I'm good at. It's something I have spent a lot of time working on. It's one of my big passions. So if I'm really bad on stage, I am so hard on myself. But if I'm really bad at reading a spreadsheet, I'm like, never claim to be good at it.
That's a really good distinction, actually. Like just be really hard on yourself with your strengths and demand excellence out of the things that you're good at, and be soft and kind on the things that you're not so
really soft and kind on the stuff you're not good at. And it's like, and there's certain things that as a human you need to be good at. Like there's certain things that it's like, I believe we all need to cook. You need to be able to cook if you want to eat. So you don't have to be Jamie Oliver, but boil an egg, like mash a potato, just it's the basics. And it's like I say to my kids, I don't care if you don't become a chef, but as someone who needs to eat, you need to be able to cook.
You have an interest in learning to cook.
You just got to, it's pretty simple. Eat, need to cook, right? So it's a pretty simple life skill. And I think there's some life skills out there that we need to get moderately good at.
Yeah.
And if you've got a passion for cooking, then go hard, go wild. But I think there's a few things in the middle that we should just get reasonably good at. But I think...
Sorry, what about on a, like... How do you set goals? What's your structure for like looking at where Lisa goes in the future? Because that's another one like that I think is a very interesting topic. And it's almost that same thing. There's like conflicting information on everything that you look for. And so it's about being self-aware enough to know what works for you. But like, how do you dream big? You're obviously a very ambitious person. How do you dream big and not dream so big that you paralyze yourself not knowing the first steps? And like, how do you actually structure your stuff going forward? Because I feel like I'm super spontaneous. Like if I'm interested in something, I'll chase it until I'm not interested in it, and then I'll find something else I'm interested in. I'll go all in on that, which you know, like it serves me, it's great. But at the same time, there's an element of structure and like, I guess, future vision that needs to be had. Can you talk to that for a moment? How have you managed that?
Yeah. So I'm the same. I'm super spontaneous. I have zero discipline. And there's just no point trying to make me do something I don't want to do. So it's just a waste of time. My mother worked that out quite early, thank God. And it's like, there's no point. So, and in fact, if you tell me, so I've got this wonderful business manager working for me at the moment, and she puts things in my calendar like, Lisa, to do emails. And I just look at it and go, nah, fuck yeah. Now you've said that, I'm not going to. So I have this kind of oppositional defiance piece where I'm like, nah, if you tell me what to do, not going to. Like if she put in there, don't do emails, I'd probably be like, you know what, you fucking watch, I'm going to do emails now.
Oh, my girlfriend is going to laugh at this.
I have this really childish thing inside me that the minute you say, you should do this, I go, not going to. And I found out it's called oppositional defiance disorder. So it's actually a thing where you do not like to do what anyone in a position of authority tells you. So it makes you quite fun at school. It's a constant battle. So I run on pure energy and pure instinct. I'm really intuitive. And I go, oh, I'm going to do a public event with 1,000 people. And, oh, yeah, that'd be awesome. And then I'm like, oh, where will I do it? Oh, I know. Right. Wow. What's the point? Okay, cool. What will I need? Oh, yeah, right. So then I ring my business manager, go, right, we're going to do this and I want to do this. And can you ring and organize this venue? And she's like, oh my God. And I'm like, and I'm ringing her an hour later going, what'd you find out? What's the venue cost? She's like, shit, Lisa. Like, you only told me an hour ago. And I'm like, come on, fast, let's go. Like, I'm really into speed.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I always talk about how I have a kind of a combination of ADHD and OCD. So everything has to be perfect for only a really short period of time, because then I've lost interest. Then I'm like, I'm over it now. Don't really care. Like I arrived home on the 1st of December last year and decided I was going to write a book. And I wrote this book and had it published by the end of February. So I was just like, right, I'm writing a book. This is what it's about. I'm going hard. I'm going to do this thing. And I was really into it. And that's it. It was up and everyone's like, what? What do you mean? I'm like, no, it's going to be done. I need it done. I'm going to have it delivered. I'm going to have it in the arms of people on the 28th of February. And people are like, you can't do that. I'm like, fucking tell me I can't do something. Like, you watch me. So it's like, and I love that. Like, never underestimate me, because that's just the perfect way to light my fire. And so I just set myself projects like that and go, right, I'm doing it. And I don't think it's easy for people around me. I would suggest that possibly I'm not that easy to be, because my poor, very calm and long-serving husband is so divine, and he's like, oh, here we go, like another fucking idea. But do you know what? They work. So I'm like, just get out of my way. And I'm like, you're either beside me, you know, in front of me, or in my fucking way. So just don't get in my way, because I'm like a bulldozer. And I'm like, well, are you helping or are you hindering? So there's only two things you're doing right now. You're either beside me, you know, you're behind me because I've left you behind. Just get out of my way. They're the only two options. And it's like, I don't have time for people to get in my way and tell me why things won't work. I'm like, I've got zero interest in that. Like, what, you think you're helping? You know, so I don't sort of set, like, I guess that's a goal. Like, writing that book was like, right, I'm going to do this book. It's going to be out by this date and I'm going hard. And then I get really driven because I want that to happen by that date. I also do things like make myself publicly accountable. Yeah. So I will go out there and say, hey, this book's out on the 28th of Feb. And they're like, and that helps me because it keeps me accountable. But I think for me, I have to be passionate about something to make it work. Yeah, totally. So people say, oh, do you want to do this? And I'm like, nah, I don't. Actually, nah. And, you know, I just got asked by someone to be a chair of a board. And I went, nah, like, it's either a hell yes or a hell no. Yeah, I love that. And if it's not a hell yes, I'm like, nah. Because in the past, I would say yes because I wanted to please people. And now I go, oh, look, you know what? I can say yes. I'm going to let you down because I'm going to run out of steam for your stupid project. Yeah. So I'm just better to say no now. Yeah. And part of that is a self-care because it stops me having to beat myself up later when I fuck it up. Yeah. Because totally. I know I'm not, you know, I know enough about myself now. I just turned 50. I've been on the planet a while, so I know enough about myself to know that I'm probably not going to see that through. You know, and you actually, if you're honest, you know that at the beginning. You know, when someone asks you something and you go, yeah, okay. And then you're like, fuck, why did I say yes to that?
Totally. Totally.
Yeah.
What's your relationship to fear?
I don't really have any. I have no fear. Don't do fear. I have zero interest in it. I think it's a waste of fucking time. I think, you do stuff and it doesn't work, or you don't do it and it doesn't work. But either way, it doesn't work, right? It's like, I just don't think fear. I have a really massive faith, a very big spiritual faith. So I call myself spiritual but not religious. So I don't subscribe to any. I call myself a spiritual freelancer. I've literally looked at every religion and spiritual following around the world and taken sort of a teaspoon of everything. I looked at Buddhism and then I found out they didn't have possessions, and I was like, oh fuck no, I really like stuff. So, and they're really into suffering, and I'm like, I really like, if Buddhists just had more stuff and weren't so big on the suffering, because I don't believe in suffering. I'm like, why would you suffer? What's the fucking point of that? Like, and I have a couple of friends who are Buddhists, and we're constantly having these conversations about, they're like, you can't have a lotus without the mud. And I'm like, oh, fuck the mud. Let's just get more lotus, Like, I just don't understand why people sign up to suffer. Like, it's not part of who I am to even understand that.
Yeah.
I believe people do suffer, and I think it's terrible when bad things happen. But I believe everything's a lesson, and I ultimately believe I'll be fine. And you know what? I'm always fine. I've been fine for 50 years. And even when I'm not fine, I'm still fine. Because you go, oh my God, I could never handle that if this happened. And it happens and you go, well, fuck, look at me standing here being fine.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So there's really not much that can happen to us that we can't survive.
Yeah, totally.
Really. And I've had all kinds of shit happen in my life. And it's like, here I am, fine again.
When you've got that attitude, that's correct. When you've got your attitude and your perspective, that's 100% correct. Nothing can get you.
No, and it's like there is stuff that happens to me that is not okay, and it's awful, and it's at the time it's horrendous. And like 3 of my children have got type 1 diabetes, so they're all insulin dependent. And when your child's been rushed to a hospital and you don't know what's wrong with it, and you then find out you're going to have to stick 6 needles in each child every day for the rest of its life, you're like, what the fuck? Why me? And then you're like, you know what? Why me? Because I can handle it. And why me? Because there's going to be something we learn that's amazing, and there's other people out there always with something worse. And I just always go, okay, this is shit. And I don't know why this has happened, but guess what? It has. And my job is to work out the upside. So I always just try and find, because there's always an upside. There's always something that comes out of it.
Totally. The greatest adversity, I know it sounds cheesy, but the greatest adversity is your greatest teacher. But like when you've been through a few of them and you come out the other side, that is fucking true. Like it's 100% true. And once you've experienced that, I think you can find gratefulness in the moment when you're having a tough time more easily than if you haven't.
100%. Like my best friend, her husband, 46 years old, dropped dead a year ago. Just dropped dead. And he was really healthy, fit, amazing, just dropped dead. And I got to her house at 6:45 in the morning, and she said, what am I going to do? I can't, what am I going to do? And I said, you're going to be fine. And she said, how do you know? I said, because you've got no fucking choice. I said, you have no choice. There are 3 children sitting in that lounge and you're going to be fine. And you know what? She's incredible. And shit, it's not easy. And it's not even easy helping her and watching her. But do you know what? She's fine. Because what else? She's got no other choice.
Yeah,
so
totally.
It's like, I'm quite into getting in and doing the hard stuff. I'm not scared of hard stuff. I kind of like the hard stuff. I'm obsessed with birth and death. I love the hard ends of life. Right. I love death. I work as a funeral celebrant. And I think actually working in the funeral world is a real honour to actually, help people or help families transition through people dying. I think, I'm not scared of death. I find death actually really intriguing.
Yeah, right.
It's a little bit, I quite like it. People are like, what's wrong with you? I'm like, I like talking about that. How did he die? People are like, oh my God. But I think it's interesting. And I think it's, it's one of the most certain things that's going to happen to us. We're all going to die. It's like, fuck it. And my friend of mine got cancer recently. And she's like, oh my God, I'm going to die. I said, fuck, me too. I said, you're not that special. She was like, oh. I said, we're all going to die. Like, seriously? She went, oh, not true. I said, well, just because your raffle ticket might get called a bit early. I said, come on, you're still alive now. I can go out. She went, oh, okay. It's like, it's really boring, isn't it? I think we don't need to get too, I'm revoltingly positive. I'm a little bit annoying.
I love it though. It's so good. It's so refreshing because even like in the personal development space, obviously you sort of play in that space, and it becomes like working on yourself and self-growth and all the stuff that is amazing about life is so tedious. It's like it's portrayed in such a tedious way, and it's so boring, and it's made out to be hard, and like working on yourself's hard, and this, it's like your attitude.
I know, and it's all this bullshit, achieve, believe, can see. It's like, oh, shut up. It's like, just do shit you love and get up every day and be a really nice person and be really good to yourself. That's it. Like, be good to you, be good to the people around you. You know, don't be an asshole. Just fucking be nice to yourself and just try and find something you're really good at and do more of that. That's really what it's about. It's like if everyone just found something they were really good at and just did more of that, I think, years and years and years ago when my children were little, I discovered a program called the Virtues Project, and it's an American couple who created this amazing program of virtues, and they're not values, so slightly different than, say, personal values, but it's virtues, and they teach them to children. And so I got really into it. I was really inspired by this, and I read the book and, bought the T-shirt, went on the course, did the whole bit, turned up and I did all the training. So I became a qualified facilitator for this thing. And everyone on the course was a teacher, and they were all like, oh, what school do you teach at? And I was like, I don't teach. They were like, why are you here? I'm like, I fucking love this shit. Like, I just love it. I just love the idea of helping people to be good. And so we had this, the whole process, and it's a really beautiful thing because it's about catching kids being good and finding what kids are good at, instead of what happens is when you have a kid and at 2 years old they turn into a little prick and you suddenly go, like, this has got to stop. We're going to lock him in the laundry and I'm like, no, that's his personality. Like, you just got to love that and find something good in it. And then the idea of the Virtues Project is that each child's like a little plant and they grow some shoot where they're really determined and they're just like a nightmare to parent. And your job is actually to grow a shoot out the other side that balances them out, rather than getting out your secateurs and lopping off that and going, you will not be determined, I won't have it. It's like, it's not your job to control these little people. It's your job to plant them and make them beautiful, and provide their nutrients so they can be whatever bloody plant they're going to be. Yeah, and I've got awesome. 4 very different plants, But I love the story about a teacher who one of the programs is that you have to find something good about every child that you work with. So this teacher had 30 children in her class, and she had to write down something she liked about all of them. And this one kid, she couldn't find anything she liked. Like, he was just a shit. And she couldn't find anything she liked. And so one day she noticed he was really annoying, really disruptive. And so one day she noticed that he was whistling. And she was like, he's actually quite good at whistling. So she wrote down good at whistling. That was the only thing she could find about this kid that was endearing. And so then on the theory that you play on people's strengths, every time he was disruptive, she would say to him, could you take Jamie outside, please, and teach him how to whistle? This kid was like, right then. So he'd go out, and then the class was better because this kid wasn't there and someone was outside learning to whistle. And she just kept doing this over and over and taking all the kids out. And this kid was a bully. Like, no one got on with him. He had no friends. It was a really sad story. And by the end of the year, he had made friends with everyone in the class. And the end of year concert, the whole class whistled, "We wish you a Merry Christmas." Wow. And he led it. And it completely changed. Like, his parents were coming into school going, what have you done? What have you done to our son? And they were like, I just caught him being good. I just caught him doing something good, and I maximized it, instead of going, sit down, shut up, sit down, shut up. Like, it's like we just get caught being bad. And then most people I work with can identify what's wrong with them before they can identify what's right.
Yeah, totally.
And I think that's what's really flawed about us as humans. It's like, it's not wrong. All this stuff. Like, I was constantly, you're distracting and you talk too much. And I'm like, you know what? I get fucking paid to talk now, so shut up. So, it's like, don't tell me I talk too much. My son talked too much, and the teacher said, he talks too much. I said, he might end up getting paid more than you. All right, so leave him alone. So it's like, I think we need to catch people being good and get really aware of what we're good at. Yeah, and it's just not in our psyche to be looking for stuff we're good at.
No, it's not at all. It's just not. It's not the way society lends itself. Like
No.
it's about squashing that down and fitting everyone into a box. And it's a real shame, because by the time you get sort of into your mid-20s or something, a lot of that passion and enthusiasm and excellence has been squashed out of you.
Yep. And kids, children actually have most of their beliefs locked in by the age of 7 or 8.
Yeah. Totally.
So by the age of 7 or 8, they've made an assumption about themselves based on what they've noticed around them.
Yep.
They've decided whether they're good, whether they're bad. They've decided whether, what sort of person, whether they're noisy, whether they're quiet. They've made all these rules for themselves. And, they may not be noisy. They just might be in a really quiet family. Mm-hmm. So, it's like all these assumptions we make that are just not true. So I think getting to know yourself is so important. I wrote another book. It's not really a book. It's just a book because it's hardly got any words in. So I gave this book to my auntie and she said, "Oh, is this your new book?" And I said, "Yes." She said, "It's a bit of a shit book." I said, "What are you talking about?" She said, "There's not much in it." So it's actually hardly got any words in. And it's actually 100 questions to ask yourself. And the idea is to go through and answer these 100 questions. And there's all kinds of shit in here, like, what do you like most about yourself? What would you do if you had $1 million and you had to spend it? How do you want to be remembered? What are you passionate about? Like all these questions. And some of them are really hard. It's like, what do you think happens when you die? And the idea is that you go through it, answer the easy ones, because I'm not into people suffering. And then if you get to the end, go back through. And I've had 90-year-olds fill this in and leave it to their children when they die. And I've had my 17-year-old daughter filled it in, and she goes, "I'm going to open it when I'm 40, Mum, and see what I really think and if I still think the same." And I think asking questions. It was a really easy book for me to put together because I love questions. So it's like, what are the questions you need to ask yourself? Like, what are you good at? What do you love? And what food is the best food that your body responds to? And how many hours of sleep do you really need, And who's your favourite person in the world? Like, "I'm my husband." I'm like, "You're lying. You're lying." Not what you meant to answer, but actually what do you really believe?
I love that. We don't stop and ask questions. We're so busy. We just go. That's actually such a cool concept for a book, because we brought my mum a similar book for Christmas, I think it was, which was literally like a diary of your life. And it was like asking all the lessons, all the cool things, the experiences, the things you enjoyed most, like what you wanted to be as a kid growing up. It was like a list of questions. And you just get to know, I think, you get to know yourself when you go through it and do it. Obviously, that's the purpose of that book. But fuck, we learned so much. Like, we're learning so much. It's not finished yet.
Yeah, exactly right. And it's so good to actually, and the other thing that I've seen it used for is friends of ours have got it at their batch, and they sit at dinner and just go through and answer a question a night as a family, and they go through and ask the question and go around the table. And so my auntie, who told me it was a shit book, she rang me up later and she said, "I really like it." She said, "Barry and I your uncle and I sit every lunchtime and we do a question, and when it's finished," she said, "we'll send it back to you." And I'm like, amazing. "Oh, that's very kind." Yeah, it's good. But I just think, ask yourself, get to know yourself. And people say to me, "Oh, I don't know what my thing is, and I don't know what my purpose is." And, they get so bloody hung up on purpose and goals. And it's like, fuck, your purpose is just something you love, something you're good at. And if you can make some money out of it, then bloody boom, right? That's even better, actually. But if your purpose is just making great scones, awesome. Make great scones. It doesn't have to be a really big thing, but it's like, if people focused more on what they're good at, they would be happier and they would have more power in their lives. Because imagine being able to walk into every room going, "Hey, I'm Lisa and I'm really good at this."
Yeah.
Exactly. Instead of going, "Oh my God, I'm probably not good enough and I don't know why I'm here." And, and I love that whole Marianne Williamson, who wrote Nelson Mandela's inaugural speech, that whole piece around, people are scared. It's their light that scares them more than their darkness. Totally. And people are scared to fucking be amazing. I'm like, you're scared. I mentor a lot of people, and I'm always saying to them, "You're actually scared of your potential, aren't you?" And they're like, "Oh, what do you mean?" And I'm like, "Well, what would happen if you got really fucking amazing? What would happen to the people around you?" And they're like, "Oh, what would happen?" And we put these limits on ourselves, and it's not even conscious. We just are actually scared that what might happen. What might happen if you turned out to be amazing, eh?
Totally.
Then what would happen? It's a big deal.
There's the first question to ask yourself.
Yeah, I know, right? There's so many good questions, and I'm a pain in the ass, like it,
I know obviously people can buy the book, and there's all the questions in there, but like if there's a couple of key questions, someone's listening, agreeing with everything
Mhm.
you're saying, like, what are a couple of the key questions that have the biggest impact?
So I think the best question is, what would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? So if you removed every failure point, if you said, oh, I want to be an All Black, oh no, I can't because I'm 50 and I'm fat and I'm, fuck, I don't care. Like, what actually would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? So, if you're 50 and fat and you want to be an All Black, you can't be. They won't take you, but that's okay. But you can still go out and coach rugby. You can still be the club captain of a club. You can still volunteer and coach schoolboys. You can still fundraise, and you can still be, because there's something about that, say, the environment of that you want to be in, and it doesn't mean. So I always think these clues, they're little breadcrumbs on your path. And that when you take away all of the thinking around, oh no, but I haven't got enough money, or I haven't got enough talent, or, all the bullshit of why you can't do something, you actually get down to something you might really like to do. So I think, what would you do if it was impossible to fail? What would you do? And I love that question. And see, mine would definitely be, I would like to sing on stage in front of 100,000 people. Like, that would blow my mind, because I've been on a stage, with 8,000 people, and it's fucking mind blowing, and I can't sing. So I wouldn't do that to the world. But I think to actually just be fully self-expressed with just your voice on a stage with, like you watch someone like Ed Sheeran, and I'm just like,
amazing, eh?
That must be the coolest feeling in the whole world.
I feel like I'm talking to myself when I talk to you, because literally, like one thing that I've always said is that if I could do one thing, it would just be to stand on stage, and like, I admire singers and people like that so much, but that must be the greatest feeling, having that energy of like 100,000 people and just like full creative expression. Incredible.
Yeah, and just with all that, just pure you, like just a noise that comes out of your body, being joyful to that many people, like that is fucking incredible, I reckon.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And like, I think if I could be anyone in the world, I'd be Freddie Mercury. I just, oh my God, I've watched that film so many times.
It's a good film.
I love it. I love that he wore kimonos. I just think I am Freddie Mercury. I live in kimonos. My cats eat out of crystal. I'm just like him, and I just loved how fully self-expressed he was, and how he just didn't give a shit about what anyone really thought. He just lived his life, and so I think another really good question is, who inspires you?
Yep. Find
some people. I talk a lot in my book, in Juggling in High Heels, about finding a big elephant, and it's based on the theory that a baby elephant, when it's born, is in a herd, and it follows the big elephants for 12 years. So for 12 years, the little elephant follows the big elephants, and it might not be the parents, it might be uncle, auntie, whatever, head elephant, follows the head elephant. And when they're 12, they split, and the little elephant buggers off and has to go and start his own tribe, his own group. Yeah, off he's got to go. And the big elephants bugger off into the bush. And so that little elephant, his whole life is determined, the quality of his life is determined on how good the learning was from his big elephants. And so I'm always saying to people, who's your big elephant? Who are you learning from? And I think you've got to always be learning from someone. And it's like, who do you want to learn from? Who? And it doesn't have to be a human that you know. You can learn from Freddie Mercury, from watching documentaries about how he lived his life and reading interviews. You can learn from, you can follow anyone. It doesn't matter whether you even get to meet them. It might be someone you know. It might be like, if you're in an industry, say you want to be an amazing rugby player, it's like, go and find someone who's better than you and learn. When I had my children, I had two amazing big elephants, two women who were like 5-6 years ahead of me in the parenting journey. And every time my kids did something fucked, I'd ring them and go, oh my God, you won't believe it. And they're like, oh, don't worry, mine did that twice. And I was like, oh, thank God. Right. So it just helps to have someone ahead of you in any journey. And it doesn't matter whether you're building a house or raising a family or becoming a leader in an industry. And, I do a lot of work with leaders in industries, and I say to them, who's your big elephant? And they're like, what? I'm like, who are you following? You've got to be following someone, always. You've always got to have someone inspiring you that makes you go, fuck, what would Freddie do right now?
Yeah, totally.
The thing I love
about you saying Freddie is that most people, when they think about mentors and role models, they look up to like the token people in the suit in the personal development industry who have, are perfect and have got their lives sorted. But actually, when you're honest about who you take inspiration from, That's the key as well, because you saying Freddie Mercury is like out of the box. Most people wouldn't say that, but that's honestly who inspires you, obviously.
Yeah, totally. And it's like I watched Michael Jordan's, Netflix documentary.
I went out and shot hoops for the first time in 10 years after watching that.
Yeah, well, I watched that, right? And so my son's like, oh, Michael Jordan, amazing. And I'm like, fuck Michael Jordan. Check out Dennis Rodman. Like, look how awesome he is. He doesn't give a shit. He's a mongrel on the court, and he's got his hair spray painted 4 different colors, and he's not going to play the game. And I just love that he's doing him. And, he did him. I remember him being on Time magazine's cover in a bridal veil in 1987. And I just remember going, fuck yeah, that's cool. Yeah. Like, how cool is that a guy that's at the top of his sports, a big macho sports guy, is quite happy to wear a woman's bloody bridal veil on the cover of the world's biggest magazine. Like, that intrigues me more than the incredible excellence of Michael Jordan, which is incredible. Don't get me wrong, he's incredible. But I'm like, you're a bit boring. You're a bit too fucking perfect. And, I like the personality, and I like the edges.
I agree with you 100%. And one of the key I think, creative expression is one of the fundamental drivers for human happiness. And when you look around, and I challenge myself on this all the time, but like, how creatively expressed are you? I haven't picked up my guitar in ages. There's things like that we push to the side because there's more important stuff to do.
Yeah.
Actually, that gives you a lot of the juice for life, hey? And so Dennis Rodman and people like that, man, he was out the gate. That guy, he was...
Totally. And that's the emotional energy. So you get a real... and like, I get a lot of energy out of like the clothes I wear, because I love really outrageous clothes. People are like, you can't wear that. I'm like, fucking watch me, right? I'm not here to be... I'm never going to wear beige, and I'm never going to blend in. And, and I wear... My clothes pick me. So I get up in the morning and something goes, yoo-hoo. I think, oh, I'm coming. And I don't care where I'm going. I wear sequins to school. I couldn't give a shit what I'm doing. I wear what makes me feel good that day. And so I'm really into self-expression. I think it's the other thing about, speaking your truth and telling people, being really honest. There's an amazing book by Brad Blanton. It's called Radical Honesty. And it's fucking excellent, because it's about just be really honest. Like, when someone goes, I said, what do you think about that? And you go, and you think, actually, and you go, oh yeah, it's okay. And you're like, no, fuck. There's a little thing inside you going, that's not what you fucking think. Just say what you think, and it's like, it's like swearing. Like, I love swearing, and I absolutely love it. I've taught my children to swear. I think it's really important. I just think, fuck, that is words, like I'm not judgmental about words at all. In fact, I think words are really funny. And I just think, people get, oh, you can't. And it's like, just because you're offended doesn't mean you're right. Just because you were raised to believe that if you say fuck, you're a really bad person. I'm like, oh, well, that's a shame, isn't it, really? What a shame for you. Whereas I think, oh, God, hypocrisy is worse than swearing. So it's like, and I think being really honest and being able to actually access your truth. So there's your voice you can express yourself with and actually saying what you think. And then, and then there's your physicality, how you present yourself, like Dennis Rodman does with all his crazy, so I find people all the time, and I think, who are your big elephants? Find someone who inspires you, and then just all you got to do is go, fuck, that's inspiring, and then get really deep on why. Like, why is that inspiring? What is it about them? Like, for me, Dennis Rodman's inspiring because he doesn't give a shit, and I think that's inspiring. I think will.i.am, I'm so in love with will.i.am. I think he's like the coolest guy on the planet. He's doing incredibly good work, getting kids into technology in the ghettos in America, and he's kind and he's political and he's super fucking clever, and he wears ridiculous shit that he gets made in one-off outfits. I think he's amazing. I think Will Smith's amazing. I tend to like Will's. I love Will Smith. I think he's ridiculous in the way he lives his life, and his family values, I think, are insane. Like, I find him really interesting. I spend a lot of time listening to him. And, it's like, I love Russell Brand. I think he's outrageous. I love people that are really honest and go, yes, so what? I'm a sex addict and I'm a drug addict, and so what? We're all addicts. Everyone's addicted to something. Just most boring people are addicted to problems. They want to sit around and fucking whinge full time. And it's like, God, it'd be way more interesting if you're addicted to heroin, wouldn't it? Than just going, oh, I'm just really into problems. Here are my problems for today. It's like, oh my God, boring people with problems,
Oh, I love it. I love your attitude, eh? What's the impact that you want to have on the world? Like, with all the work that you're doing, what impact are you striving to have?
Look, I just think people should, if people could tell me that they were really genuinely happy and people actually were striving to be the biggest version of themselves, I don't like people playing small unless they want to play small. So I always say to people, I'm allergic to boring people. I have a massive fucking intolerance to dull. So if you're boring, don't talk to me, because my face will say straight away, like, fuck, I'm really bored right now. So I'm not very tolerant. I'm not very good with boring people. And so I want to help people who want to be bigger and better. And I'm like, if you want to be bigger and better, I can stretch you in ways you have not even thought about. But don't come to me if you want to be mediocre, because mediocrity makes me vomit. And there's plenty of mediocre fucking people to hang out with, So I'm really, really strict on that. I'm like, so I really like hanging out with, I like, my biggest values are really fun. I think fun is so important, and just shoving and pushing, just pushing and shoving. And then, but on the same time, really, really being nice to yourself. Because I think being nice to yourself is the secret weapon in how you'll get there. And it never ends well when you're your own worst enemy. Because at the end of the day, you've got to go to bed with yourself. You've got to wake up with yourself. It's like, do you really like who you are? And, are you really enjoying your own company? And I think being able, for me to be able to say that one of my favorite people to hang out with is me, to me, that's one of my greatest achievements, that I've hated myself. I've liked myself. I've got to know myself. And now I'm like, me and Lisa, we're good.
I love that. Good. You're one of the only people that I've heard say that. And it's like, it's such a cool thing to hear come out of someone's mouth when you connect with them. It's like, I'm going to take that, or that's the one thing I'm going to take on out of this conversation for myself. Yeah,
just learn to like yourself. And, you notice bits and you go, oh, fuck, that's not very cool, Lisa. And then you're like, okay, well, we can either decide to like that, or we can decide to fix that. And so what are you going to do? Is it that bad that you need to fix it, or is it really bad? And you're like, so I used to be late all the time, late for everything. And then I was like, I don't like that I'm late, actually. So I was like, okay, what am I going to do about it? And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to strive to not be late, because I decided that I broke it down and went, why don't I like to be late? And I thought, because when I'm late, some people assume I'm arrogant, that I think nothing starts till I get there, and that's pretty shit. I don't really want people thinking, oh, Lisa thinks she's so special, she doesn't have to turn up. Another thing, I like to think of myself as really professional. So I'm like, I don't want to be the person that keeps everyone waiting. I think that people's greatest asset is their time, because it's the only thing we can't get more of. So I think wasting someone's time is absolutely disgusting. Like, people that turn up late to meetings piss me off, and people that turn up late with a coffee and a muffin, I'm like, you fucking leave, because you stopped and got a coffee and a muffin. So don't come in here and say, oh, sorry, I'm late. I'm like, you're not sorry, you rude prick. Get out. Like, it really annoys me. So I used to get offended by other people's lateness, but I was okay with my own. And then I was like, ooh, hang on. I had to have a meeting with myself and go, shit, that's a bit of a double standard there, Lisa. That's not okay. So then I went, okay, so am I going to stop judging people for being late, or am I going to start being on time? So I thought, no, I'm going to start being on time. So I was like, right, so that was my little project. And then I had this wonderful mentor, Pete, and he said to me, well, you know that on time's late, right? And I was like, oh, shit. I spent 6 months working on being on time. And he said, yeah, but that's still late. I'm like, oh, shit. So now I have to be early. So now my new thing is early. And some of my friends are like, I can't believe you're early, Lisa. And I'm like, I know, but I worked really hard on that because it was worth working on for me, I thought, Nice. And now I can judge everyone who's late because I'm early.
Hey, I just want to take a moment, speaking of time, to thank you for giving up your time to do this podcast. I really appreciate it. I know that you've had a lot on, and it's just been awesome to connect with you. You've got an infectious energy and attitude and perspective, and I feel better for having the conversation. I feel like I could go out there and run a marathon or do something now. I feel really energized after speaking with you, and I hope that everyone who tunes into this obviously takes a few things away, but if anything is just choose how you show up and just bring energy. Don't be so serious, bring energy to life and just fucking be happy.
Yeah, that's pretty much fucking be happy. That's the point. Don't you reckon?
I absolutely agree with you 100%. Hey,
Lisa, thank you for having me. It's been lovely to have a good yabber with you. It's been, as I say, I think we could be related. There's a lot of similarities. Yeah.
Hey, no, I genuinely mean it. I appreciate your time. I've absolutely loved connecting with you, and I know that there's a truckload of value in there for people. If people listen to this and they want to learn more about your books that you've written or your services, or your speaking, where is the best place to track you down?
Just lisao'neill.co.nz. pretty easy. O'Neill's got 2 L's.
I was about to say it's got a double L on it.
Double L and O'Neill. I'm greedy. I've got 2 of everything. 2 boys, 2 girls, 2 cats, 2 dogs, 2 L's. So yeah, 2 L's, only 1 in Lisa, but 2 in O'Neill. And yeah, easy to find. lisao'neill.co.nz.
Fantastic. Hey, thank you so much for your time, Lisa.
You're very welcome. Thank you.